Words reveal the quality of a person's mind. According to Stoic philosophy, wisdom is not shown through loud opinions but through self-control, responsibility, and thoughtful speech. Many men damage their reputation and limit their growth by repeatedly using phrases that expose weakness, ignorance, and a lack of self-awareness. Here are 5 phrases Stoics avoid and why you should eliminate them from your vocabulary. 5 phrases stupid men always says Stoic philosophy. 1. It's not my fault. One of the most damaging phrases a man can repeat is, "It's not my fault." At first glance, the statement may seem reasonable. After all, many situations truly are beyond our control. People betray us, opportunities disappear, economies change, and unexpected hardships arrive without warning. However, the danger begins when this phrase becomes a habit rather than an observation. Many men use it as a shield to protect themselves from responsibility. Instead of examining their own choices, they immediately search for someone else to blame. Over time, this habit weakens character because it teaches the mind to focus on excuses rather than solutions. The Stoics understood a fundamental truth about human nature: responsibility creates power. The moment you accept responsibility for your actions, your mindset changes completely. Instead of feeling helpless, you begin searching for ways to improve your situation. A man who blames everyone else remains trapped because he waits for others to change. A man who accepts responsibility becomes free because he focuses on what he can control. This is why Stoicism places such importance on personal accountability. The Stoics never claimed that life was fair. They simply believed that complaining about unfairness solves nothing. Imagine a young man who dreams of building a successful career. He spends years telling himself that he would succeed if only he had better connections, more money, or more support from his family. Every setback becomes proof that the world is against him. Eventually, he stops trying because he has convinced himself that his circumstances determine his future. Meanwhile, another man faces similar obstacles but chooses a different perspective. Instead of dwelling on limitations, he asks what he can do today. He studies, learns, practices, and improves. Slowly, his life begins to change. The difference between these two men is not talent. It is responsibility. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that obstacles are part of life. He did not waste energy wishing reality were different. Instead, he focused on responding wisely to whatever happened. This is one of the most powerful lessons Stoicism offers. Every challenge presents 2 options. You can spend your energy blaming circumstances, or you can spend your energy adapting to them. One path leads to frustration. The other leads to growth. Blame feels comfortable because it protects the ego. If everything is someone else's fault, then we never have to confront our own weaknesses. Yet comfort rarely produces progress. Growth requires honesty. It requires asking difficult questions about our habits, decisions, and attitudes. Many men avoid these questions because they are uncomfortable. However, discomfort is often the doorway to improvement. Every successful person reaches a point where they stop making excuses and start making changes. Consider how often people say things like, "I would be successful if I had more opportunities." While opportunities matter, this mindset can become dangerous. History is filled with individuals who achieved extraordinary things despite difficult circumstances. They succeeded because they focused on action rather than excuses. They understood that while they could not control everything, they could control their effort, attitude, and persistence. The next time you are tempted to say, "It's not my fault," pause for a moment. Ask yourself a different question. Instead of asking who caused the problem, ask what you can do about it. This simple shift transforms your perspective. It moves your attention away from blame and toward growth. It reminds you that your future depends less on your circumstances and more on your response to them. The strongest men are not those who experience the fewest difficulties. They are those who refuse to surrender responsibility when difficulties appear. They understand that responsibility is not a burden. It is a source of strength. When you stop blaming others and start owning your choices, you begin developing the resilience, confidence, and self-respect that define a truly wise man. 2. "I can't help it." Another phrase that reveals weakness is, "I can't help it." This statement often appears when people want to justify behavior they know they should change. They say it about their anger, laziness, impatience, procrastination, or lack of discipline. By repeating these words, they convince themselves that they are powerless over their own actions. Stoicism strongly rejects this idea. The Stoics believe that self-mastery is one of the greatest achievements a person can attain. Every human being experiences emotions. Anger, fear, jealousy, disappointment, and frustration are natural parts of life. The problem is not feeling these emotions. The problem begins when we allow them to control our behavior. Many people act as though emotions are commands that must be obeyed. They become angry and immediately lash out. They feel fear and immediately quit. They feel discouraged and immediately stop trying. Then they defend their actions by saying, "I can't help it." The Stoics taught that there is always a space between an emotion and a reaction. Within that space lies freedom. A wise man recognizes his emotions without becoming their servant. He understands that feelings are temporary, but actions have lasting consequences. This awareness allows him to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Imagine a man who loses his temper whenever someone disagrees with him. He believes his anger is uncontrollable. Yet the same man can remain calm when speaking to someone powerful or influential. This reveals an important truth. His anger is not uncontrollable. He simply has not trained himself to manage it consistently. Self-control is a skill, and like any skill, it improves through practice. Many of the greatest failures in life occur because people convince themselves they cannot change. They tell themselves they are naturally lazy, naturally impatient, or naturally weak. These labels become self-fulfilling prophecies. When you repeatedly tell yourself that change is impossible, you stop making an effort. Over time, the habit becomes stronger because it is never challenged. Stoicism encourages a different approach. Instead of saying, "I can't help it," say, "I can improve it." This small change in language creates a massive change in mindset. Suddenly, the focus shifts from helplessness to growth. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of your habits and start seeing yourself as their master. The path to self-control is not easy. It requires discipline, patience, and daily effort. There will be moments when you fail. There will be times when old habits return. However, every effort strengthens your character. Every act of self-control builds confidence. Every victory over impulse increases your freedom. True strength is not measured by physical power. It is measured by the ability to govern yourself. A man who cannot control his emotions, habits, or desires will always struggle, regardless of his talents or achievements. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that mastering yourself is the foundation of mastering life. For this reason, wise men avoid saying, "I can't help it." They understand that while change may be difficult, it is always possible. Instead of surrendering to weakness, they commit themselves to growth. That commitment is what separates ordinary men from extraordinary ones. 3. Life owes me something. There is a phrase that many people never say out loud, yet they carry it deep within their minds every day. That phrase is, "Life owes me something." It appears whenever a person believes success should arrive without sacrifice, respect should come without character, or rewards should exist without effort. The Stoics warned against this way of thinking because it creates endless disappointment. The world does not operate according to our expectations. Life makes no promises. It offers opportunities, challenges, victories, and setbacks, but it does not guarantee outcomes simply because we want them. To understand this lesson, imagine a young man named David. Growing up, David believed he was destined for greatness. He constantly dreamed about wealth, influence, and success. There was nothing wrong with these ambitions. The problem was that he believed these things would somehow arrive automatically. He watched successful people and thought they were simply lucky. He assumed that one day his opportunity would appear and everything would change overnight. Years passed. David graduated from school and entered the workforce. He expected recognition almost immediately. When promotions went to others, he became bitter. When friends achieved success, he became jealous. He convinced himself that life was unfair. Instead of asking what skills he needed to develop, he focused on what he believed he deserved. The more he compared himself to others, the more frustrated he became. One evening, David met an older mentor. During their conversation, he spent nearly an hour complaining about everything that had gone wrong in his life. He blamed his circumstances, his upbringing, and his lack of opportunities. When he finally finished speaking, the mentor asked a simple question. "What exactly does life owe you?" David was silent. The mentor continued. "Did life promise you success? Did life sign an agreement guaranteeing wealth, happiness, or recognition? Or did you simply expect these things because you wanted them?" Those questions changed everything. For the first time, David realized he had spent years waiting for rewards he had not earned. He had focused on expectations instead of effort. He wanted results without discipline. He wanted recognition without excellence. Most importantly, he wanted life to be fair according to his personal definition of fairness. The Stoics understood that entitlement is one of the fastest paths to misery. The moment you believe the world owes you something, you become dependent on circumstances outside your control. Every setback feels like an injustice. Every challenge feels personal. Every success achieved by another person feels like a loss for you. Marcus Aurelius faced enormous responsibility, political conflict, war, and personal tragedy. Yet he never approached life with entitlement. He understood that difficulties were part of existence. Instead of demanding easier circumstances, he focused on becoming stronger. This is one of the defining characteristics of Stoic wisdom. Think about a farmer planting seeds. He does not demand a harvest the next morning. He understands that growth requires patience. He waters the soil, removes weeds, and remains committed to the process. The same principle applies to every meaningful goal in life. Success grows through consistent effort, not wishful thinking. Many men become trapped because they spend more time complaining than improving. They focus on what they deserve rather than what they are becoming. The Stoic path encourages the opposite approach. Stop asking what life owes you. Start asking what you can contribute. Stop focusing on rewards. Focus on excellence. Stop comparing your journey to others. Focus on your next step. When David adopted this mindset, his life slowly transformed. Nothing changed overnight. The world did not suddenly become easier. However, his attitude changed completely. Instead of expecting opportunities, he created them. Instead of waiting for recognition, he earned it. Instead of resenting successful people, he learned from them. Years later, he achieved many of the goals he once dreamed about. The difference was that he no longer believed life owed him anything. He understood that achievement is earned through discipline, persistence, and character. The happiest men are rarely those who receive everything they want. They are the men who stop expecting the world to serve them and start focusing on serving a greater purpose. Freedom begins the moment entitlement ends. Wise men understand this. Foolish men spend their lives demanding what was never promised. 4. Everyone else is doing it. One of the oldest excuses in human history is, "Everyone else is doing it." At first, the phrase seems harmless. Yet it reveals a dangerous habit of mind. It suggests that popularity determines correctness. It implies that if enough people choose a particular path, that path must be right. Stoicism strongly challenges this belief. The Stoics taught that wisdom is not measured by numbers. Truth remains true even when few people follow it. Imagine a young man named Michael. Throughout his life, he wanted acceptance more than anything else. He feared rejection. He feared criticism. Most of all, he feared standing alone. Whenever his friends made a decision, he followed. Whenever society celebrated a trend, he embraced it. He rarely stopped to ask whether these choices aligned with his values. At first, this approach seemed to work. People liked him. He fit in easily. He avoided conflict. However, over time he noticed something troubling. Despite always following the crowd, he felt increasingly lost. His goals were unclear. His values felt borrowed. His decisions reflected other people's expectations rather than his own convictions. One day, an older colleague shared a lesson that Michael would never forget. "If you follow the crowd everywhere," the man said, "you will eventually end up wherever the crowd is going, whether that destination is good or bad." The words struck him deeply. Michael began paying attention to how often people justified poor choices by appealing to popularity. Some neglected their health because everyone around them did the same. Others wasted years chasing status and approval because society encouraged it. Many ignored personal growth because mediocrity had become normal. The Stoics understood this danger centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself not to be distracted by public opinion. He recognized that crowds are often driven by emotion rather than reason. What is popular today may be forgotten tomorrow. What is praised today may be criticized next year. History provides countless examples of this truth. Entire societies have supported harmful ideas simply because those ideas were widely accepted. Popularity is not proof of wisdom. Numbers do not determine virtue. 1,000 people can be wrong just as easily as one person can be right. Michael slowly began making decisions based on principles rather than approval. Sometimes this meant disagreeing with friends. Sometimes it meant refusing opportunities that conflicted with his values. At times it felt lonely. Yet something remarkable happened. The more he trusted his principles, the more confidence he developed. True confidence does not come from fitting in. It comes from knowing who you are. A man who constantly seeks approval becomes dependent on others for his sense of worth. A man guided by principles remains steady even when others disagree with him. The strongest men in history were rarely popular during their most important moments. They stood firm when others surrendered. They followed reason when others followed emotion. They chose integrity when others chose convenience. Their courage came from conviction rather than approval. If your goal is to become wise, stop asking what everyone else is doing. Ask what is right. Stop measuring your choices by popularity. Measure them by character. The crowd changes direction constantly. Principles endure. Years later, Michael reflected on his transformation. He realized that his greatest growth began when he stopped following the crowd and started following his values. The lesson was simple but powerful. Just because everyone is doing something does not mean you should. Wisdom requires independent thought. Strength requires courage. Greatness requires the willingness to stand apart when necessary. 5. I'll start tomorrow. Perhaps no phrase has destroyed more dreams than "I'll start tomorrow." Millions of people have spoken these words. They say them when discussing fitness, business, relationships, education, personal growth, and countless other goals. The phrase sounds harmless because it suggests future action. However, in reality, it often becomes a sophisticated form of self-deception. Consider the story of James. James had a dream. He wanted to transform his life. He wanted better health, greater confidence, financial success, and meaningful accomplishments. Every night he imagined the person he could become. Yet every morning he postponed action. He would wake up motivated and tell himself he would begin tomorrow. Tomorrow arrived, and another excuse appeared. He was too tired, too busy, too distracted, too stressed. The following day brought another reason. Weeks became months. Months became years. One evening, while cleaning old boxes in his home, James discovered a notebook from nearly a decade earlier. Inside were goals he had written when he was younger. To his shock, many of those goals remained unfinished. Not because they were impossible. Not because opportunities were unavailable. But because he had continuously postponed action. For several minutes he sat in silence. Then he realized something painful. The future he had been waiting for had already arrived many times. Every tomorrow eventually became today. Yet he kept postponing the work. This realization changed him. The Stoics constantly reflected on the limited nature of time. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that life is short. He understood that procrastination is not merely a productivity problem. It is a misunderstanding of life itself. Every delayed action costs time, and time is the one resource that can never be recovered. Most people assume they have plenty of time. They act as though opportunities will always be available. They imagine they can postpone growth indefinitely. Yet life rarely provides guarantees. Circumstances change. Health changes. Opportunities disappear. James finally decided to act. Not next week. Not next month. Not next year. Today. The first steps were small. He exercised for a few minutes. He read a few pages. He worked on his goals for a short period each day. The progress seemed insignificant at first. However, consistency created momentum. Momentum created confidence. Confidence created transformation. Within a few years, his life looked completely different. Looking back, James realized something profound. The hardest part had never been the work itself. The hardest part had been starting. Many men wait for motivation before taking action. The Stoics reversed this process. They understood that action often creates motivation. You do not need to feel ready. You need to begin. You do not need perfect conditions. You need commitment. The graveyard of human potential is filled with unfinished dreams, abandoned goals, and postponed ambitions. Not because people lack talent. Not because they lacked intelligence. But because they kept saying, "I'll start tomorrow." Wise men understand that tomorrow is uncertain. Today is real. This moment is real. The opportunity before you is real. If there is a goal you have been postponing, a skill you want to learn, a habit you need to build, or a dream you wish to pursue, remember this lesson. The perfect moment does not exist. The ideal conditions may never arrive. Life rewards action, not intention. The future is built by what you do today. So stop saying, "I'll start tomorrow." Start now. And before you go, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more Stoic wisdom, self-discipline lessons, and powerful insights that will help you become stronger, wiser, and more resilient every day. Your journey toward greatness begins with a single decision, and that decision can be made right now.